Hi everyone! I was so sure I wasn't starting this project so soon, but I got inspired, so I just started my 13th transformation. Hope it's not an unlucky number. So I made a guardian of a golden tree. I let you know how those fairies are born out of such a tree. And now I will show you how these golden tree fairies are coming to their ends. It becomes full circle. They become the golden tree. And as they are fully grown, they will give birth to another tree fairy. But my fairy is still young, just a little tree fairy who died recently, not yet capable of producing new fairies. I looked through my stock box because I knew I had a few dolls without their heads. They came to me this way. Maybe I could use one of them for this project. I'm still yet not familiar with all the kinds of monsterhighddolls. Different types of Frankie, but I had a few of these ones. I also made the birth fairy with. So for this project, this body was perfect too. And this one was very broken, and that was no problem for this project, as she's gonna be covered all over. I'm not sure yet if I need a head for this tree, and if I do, I will figure it out. But I made a mold a while ago and filled it with airdry clay, and this came out. Maybe that will do and I don't sacrifice a doll's head for this. I used this box because of its lid. I wanted to incorporate lights again, so I could hide them inside. Oh, off topic. When searching for materials to use, I found these butterflies in nice pink colors. Remember my last project? Maybe I could use it for my flower fairy. Maybe I will let you know one day. Back to this project. I decided to use the clay head. I sanded and drilled some to get it to fit. I glued it on with hot glue and I made sure it stayed in the right pose. The back of her head I filled with my homemade clay. This batch was made with 1 part cornstarch, 1 part baking soda and 1 part water. Then you heat it up and stir till it's like this. And then you let it cool, of course. And you have to use an old pan, you can't cook in it anymore. But I like another proportion recipe better, and that was 1 part baking soda, a half a part cornstarch and 3/4 of water. And you also heat it up and while stirring till the water is gone. So the little box came from the thrift store. It was a bit weak, but I thought I could strengthen it. I glued my girl in her pose with super glue and I made some holes in the lid for her support. Meanwhile, I sanded all the irregularities on her body and I glued her in her place. One of the reasons I started this project now was I needed to use my homemade clay before it goes bad. It's not durable forever. And I secured the wire in the lid with it, and hopefully the lid will be a bit stronger this way. I also wanted to cover my girl with the rest. I used this technique since my very first project, and I don't know if it's a known one, but I came up with it myself and it works great so far. I also strengthened the rest of the box with a few layers of watered down glue. And the lid got some layers too. I wanted to paint the base already, and then I had an epiphany. What if I make the paint a bit sturdy? So I put some Bookbinders glue in there. And what if I try to make it a bit more structured? So I put some baking soda in there as well. And what if I try to make some leaves with this paste? For the two other projects, I tried different types of techniques for the leaves, and for this one I also wanted to use other kinds of leaves. I do these projects to learn, and there are many ways to make leaves, so let's try this. First I tried some ferns. I also tried little leaves, but I didn't like how they turned out. And of course I covered the base and her whole body with the paste. I wanted her navel to be visible, so I made sure it stayed that way. And I didn't make her ears, but at this point, very logical, her ears were the first to turn into branches after she died. This tree fairy knows she's dying and she finds the perfect spot to root. And then she slowly grows into a golden tree, and when she's tall and old enough, she then is gonna give birth to a new fairy. With the help of a golden bird. But that will come later. I had some foliage I got from different plastic plants from the action, and I hate the plastic look, so I gave them a layer of the paste as well. And they turned out nice. I glued them onto pieces of wire. I also glued and covered with the paste. So this is one layer of the paste, so she needs more. But I love it already. As I went along, I tried to disguise all the seams and joints, and it worked really beautiful. I think this will do instead of the homemade clay. I glued all her branches in place, most on her head. I made the holes for the branches with my X-Acto knife. That was a bit safer and easier than a drill. After a day the paste is a bit thicker, but in this case that was just better. I covered all the irregularities and I also went back with it on her body to get some more structure. And I love what it does. It really is starting to look like the bark of a tree. And I gave her some more branches. And she needed some roots, right? I forgot that part. So I glued some wire on her legs and covered them with the paste, trying to blend all together. When I started to think about this concept, I wanted her to be more covered by the tree already. But when I worked on her with this stuff, I found that this begin stage is really pretty. I love that you still see that she was a woman figure. So I left it with just a few roots, a bit of bark and a few branches. Well, I love her already, but she is a bit too green, so she needed some color. I only used my inktence pencils as a wet brush technique for this. I did 2 or 3 layers to get some depth in the colors. Brown tones beneath and more lighter colors on the top, and her head got the red reminiscence of her hair color. Her belly button had to be gold. There is the exit for the fairies later when they are born. The base I covered with a variety of foliage and watered down glue, and for lack of a leaf punch I used a paper punch on a leaf from my garden. And if anyone knows where this stuff is from, which plant, or I think it's a tree, please tell me. It's way cheaper to harvest it yourself than to buy it. At least I think so. I put the fern together with hot glue. I glued EVA foam under the base. Something was missing, some color, some more color. And I wanted to make the golden fairy bird, but I had no idea how and from what material. I began with some polymer clay. The bird was a disaster. I don't even want to show you. It has to be so small, and that's not within my skill set yet. A little squirrel was maybe okay for now. But this clay brand is so soft, it's hard to handle. It melts between your fingers. And I didn't like how it turned out either. I tried another bird with some cotton balls and watercolors. So ugly. I don't know what to do at this point. I looked in my storage boxes and I found these snowballs I used for Christmas a long time ago. If I cut one a bit smaller, it could be its head. And I still had a lot of feathers. I didn't want to use feathers anymore, actually, because they can decay over time. But if I covered them with paint, maybe that will last a long time, maybe. So I covered a few feathers in golden metallics. Cut out a few tiny bits for the head, the wings and the tail. And I was very pleased with the result. Happy days! Oh yeah, and I gave the base a few pink rocks and some tiny pink mushrooms I made from the leftover piercings from my husband. And at this point I decided that she's done. Yay! This was such a nice project to do. It was reasonably easy, very cheap compared to all the face-ups and the MSCs and all that stuff, and made fairly click, and made fairly click, and made fairly quickly. But that is also mainly because I didn't put any lights in. When I started, I wanted to hide all the light cables completely in the tree. But when I decided that she wasn't going to get that big, I couldn't do that anymore. And I didn't saw any other way to put in the lights. The only thing I'm sad about is that she is tilting backwards. Somewhere down the line that happened without me knowing. But well, the rest I'm very pleased with. What do you think of my fairy who died? I love to read all your comments. And if you like this video, maybe give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you didn't already. It would make my day. I also want to thank all those people who already liked and commented on my previous videos. Everyone is so nice. I really loved all comments. Hope to see you on my next project. Bye!